Coming next on Street Signs, a recap of the day's top stories, then Overstock.com suing a hedge fund known for short selling, although it is a respectable hedge fund, we should point out. Now, is this a justifiable action or just looking for a way to explain a falling stock price? The chairman of Overstock.com will be here to explain, first on CNBC, coming next. Yeah. Coming next, Overstock.com sues a hedge fund, a respected hedge fund known for short selling, saying it contributed to the downfall of its stock price. Is that a justifiable cause or simply a search for a scapegoat? We'll have that story coming up. Well, commercials for online retailer Overstock.com say the company's business is all about the O. Today, it's more like, uh-oh. Overstock is suing a hedge fund known for short selling and an independent research group claiming they both conspired to drive down its stock for profit. CNBC senior correspondent Scott Cohn joins us now with that story. And what are you hearing on this one, Scott?
Well, Ron, this is an escalation of a long-running battle between Overstock.com, its CEO Patrick Byrne, and short sellers. Short sellers sell borrowed stock they don't yet own, so they profit when the price goes down. Byrne has alleged for years that short sellers have been spreading false, bad information about his company to drive down the stock price and make money. Now, Overstock has filed suit in California state court, alleging at least one big hedge fund, which is short of the stock, conspired with a research firm to put out negative reports on Overstock. The hedge fund named in the suit is Rocker Partners, which is run by David Rocker. According to the suit, Rocker and others had direct input into reports put out by Gradient Analytics, a research firm that provides earnings analysis for hedge funds and mutual funds. The suit claims Rocker got advanced looks at the research reports that Gradient put out, roughly 58 reports over the last 2 years. And the suit blames those reports, which it calls tainted and malicious, for the plunge in the stock from its all-time high of more than $77 a share in January to around $45 today. The suit also lists 100 other unnamed defendants, hedge funds, broker-dealers, and clearing firms that Overstock claims were part of the scheme. Patrick Byrne, the CEO, said on a conference call this morning that the web of stock bashers goes even further than the defendants in the suit. While not accusing anyone of wrongdoing, he mentioned journalists, money managers, even regulators. And Byrne disclosed that the Securities and Exchange Commission began an informal investigation of the company in February, soon after the stock bashing began. No comment from the SEC or from David Rocker or his firm. Gradient Analytics also declined to comment directly on the lawsuit, but in a letter to CNBC, Executive Vice President Matthew Kleiber, who's also an individual defendant, says, "We are proud of our reputation for providing objective, unbiased, and rigorous investment research to many of the world's preeminent financial institutions. It is rare for companies to directly take on short sellers, and when they have tried, they have had limited, if any, success, Ron. We'll see what happens in this one."
Indeed, and we're going to find out a little more about this now, Scott, because live on the allegations here with us is Overstock.com Chairman and President Patrick Byrne, who joins us for his first television interview today. Mr. Byrne, thank you for being with us today. We appreciate you joining us.
Ron, good to be on.
First of all, give us the evidence that you have that a naked short-selling scheme is behind the decline in your stock price.
We have affidavits from people who participated.
All right, can you be more specific?
No, I could. I'm not going to. We have affidavits from people who participated.
And what did they say was done exactly?
They say that the research was supplied to Rocker before it was published to the other clients, that Rocker had a hand in editing it, making changes, making demands that certain grades be lowered, and then ultimately that Camelback...
which is now Gradient, right?
Gradient, I'm sorry. The Gradient actually hold the research so he could build his position. It continues. I mean, the same people say Herb Greenberg at TheStreet.com is certainly linked to this.
Linked in what way? I mean, you're making now allegations about journalists helping others to front-run or trade illegally in the shares of your company's stock.
That's correct. That's what I am doing.
All right. And so what evidence do you have that a journalist...
I've got affidavits from people who were involved and can tell the whole story, and that I look forward to the day that those are public.
All right. Now, let me ask you about the SEC investigation, which you disclosed on your conference call this morning. Is this SEC investigation, which you said was begun in February and is informal, an investigation of the short sellers or an investigation of your company and its financials?
Well, first of all, I think I'm not supposed to officially know. I was tipped off anonymously from folks within Wall Street that the SEC had gone on a fishing trip. I've been highly...
So you're getting inside information,
I've been highly critical of the SEC for quite some time, and they started an informal investigation, and my understanding is it had to stop within 60 or 90 days. It went nowhere. There was nothing to be found, and I'm an open book.
All right, now let me ask you about your open book, because when you talk to short sellers who don't like your company or your company's management, or more directly, even your management style, they say your revenues may have grown, but in 4 of the last 5 quarters, you have neither turned a gross profit or a net profit in those periods. You have a cash burn rate over the last 6 months of about $45 million. You're going through cash, and you have yet to implement a successful program of any that you have outlined in your business plans or that you comment directly on in your second quarter earnings report, for instance. Can you address those concerns?
Sure. I can say that we generated $21 million of cash last year. We've grown in our first 5 years at roughly the same rate Amazon did in theirs. We did it without losing $2.8 billion. We lost $5 million GAAP last year. If I wanted to play the pro forma games that other people do, or EBITDA, or any of those stupid things folks on Wall Street pay attention to, I'd be saying, hey, we had 10 million positive EBITDA and all the. I don't play those games. On any, as far as has it matched what we've said, we came public at 3 years ago and have, I think, compounded at 102% interest, 102% rate since then. We have had massive increases in gross profits. You're just flat wrong on that. On and on. So
well, I just looked at your second quarter earnings report, and
you're saying we didn't have gross profits?
Operating income. I'm sorry.
Okay, thanks.
4 out of 5 periods, operating income, there was none. In fact, there were losses, and then net income, there were also losses in 4 out of the last 5 quarters.
That's correct. And as I've said to the street for several years, what you're going to see us do is basically double on the top line, and on the net income line come out plus or minus 1%. I've been very upfront about that.
Now, let me ask about the short selling process itself. With respect to that, there are some who contend that even those who would short your stock are not engaged in any naked short selling type schemes. In fact, they may have appropriately shorted the stock as they are required to do by their investment banks, and that you could have individuals who are shorting the stock against the box. That is a legal tax-related strategy where you own the stock and you short some to hedge your position. Or
I think Robert Rubin got rid of that as a tax-related strategy. It didn't pass the smile test. But other than that, you're accurate in what you've said. I have no problem with shorts. Shorting is a legitimate activity. I've shorted mildly. I've shorted stocks. It's legitimate. Short sellers are not ipso facto bad guys. It's perfectly legitimate. I have no beef whatsoever with shorts.
All right, now let me ask you about company executives, because we have seen in previous instances where company executives who wanted to lock in income either from, their option grants or things like that have engaged in derivative transactions where they have, outside this country, shorted the stock as part of a derivative transaction to take income home without having to show that they sold the stock that they own in their own firm. Have you engaged in any practices like that?
I have not. There was a derivative trader on the desk of one of the large prime brokers a year ago who was spreading that rumor. It's a lie. It was a lie then. I challenged him to come on a phone call and talk about it. It was a flat lie, and they did it because that prime broker had overlent 400,000 shares that they didn't have in the box, and they were trying to cover, and it was just in their economic interest to lie about it.
Now, I am intimately familiar with the lawyers who are representing you, because I did a piece on Dateline about short selling and companies that may have been victimized by naked short selling schemes. John O'Quinn, a Houston lawyer who's won big civil litigation cases in both tobacco, silicone gel breast implants, and things like that. But let me ask you something about the allegations that this is a systemic problem that includes not just a set of individuals, but the entire stock market system itself. That is a very broad allegation to make, and one that, in the end, might be difficult to prove whether it's true or not.
Okay. Well, I have a response and a question for you, Ron. My response is, first of all, I know it sounds insane. When you first get into it, it sounds insane. But I'll put it this way. Not long after I started trying to make a difference on this issue, I got a phone call from somebody claiming to be within the SEC, and he used that to get through. And he said, I want to tell you, you've got hundreds of folks here in the SEC in the rank and file watching you and cheering you on. You're not making people at the top happy, and there's probably going to be some lawyers in your future. You can't go around criticizing the SEC. And I said, sir or madam, what is your... I don't want to be a nut here. Am I completely off base? And I was told, look, if you could see the FTD, the failure to deliver reports that I could see.
I've seen some of those myself in bulletin board stocks, yes.
You would be amazed the system is holding together, because it's no longer bulletin board stocks. Under Freedom of Information Act request in June, The SEC released 6% of 150 to 230 million shares per day are failing on NASDAQ and New York Stock Exchange at a 3.3 billion. Now, you worked on this for 2 years, Ron, and people expected a lot. And I have to say the piece you did I thought was rather anodyne.
Well, listen, we're all subject to criticism, and we're all subject to the limitations of the medium in which we work. But, I mean, we showed the story of Eagle Tech and what was alleged to have happened there. This story is not an easy one to tell, by the way, on television if you want to get into the, the rigors and all the details of how a naked short-selling scheme is undertaken. When you see the allegations put out by Mr. Quinn and others, they have included that individuals from Middle East entities, offshore companies, the mob, and a whole host of other people have been involved in this. Unless you can prove those allegations, you can't put them on television. So despite everybody's expectations of an expose like that, you got to be able to prove it before you say it on TV.
Well, I appreciate that. We're the first company. This is not some bulletin board over-the-counter stock. We're a $900 billion market cap company. It's been on the reg show list since January 27th, with a few days in March and April that we weren't. So we're the first. There's 200 companies now on New York Stock Exchange and NASDAQ. It's no longer a bunch of bulletin board companies. The rot is creeping through the system.
All right. Now, could you be any more specific about what transpired with respect to the shorting of the stock? What specifically was done illegally? Do you think it was naked shorting, which is not a practice that is accepted by anyone? Or do you think that what you described to me so far with respect to the Rocker case sounds more like an insider trading case, if you want to make that allegation, than it does an illegal short selling case?
You're correct in the sense that's why we're not saying that this is some stock manipulation case. It's not that at all. It's an unfair business practice case. It's not about the stock price, not about the shorting per se. It's being compared to naked short-selling schemes that have driven companies out of business or have been alleged to have driven companies out of business. And that's the way some of your lawyers and their PR people are portraying it. Well, it is. We think it's going to this practice has gone on between Rocker and Camelback Gradient. We've got the folks involved who have given us signed statements to that effect. It is the case that we've been the object of naked shorting. That's not me making that up. We've been on the reg show threshold list of companies that are seeing excessive failures to deliver. What's the average failure to delivery length of time? In our case, it's been about 185 days, with exception of 22 days straddling March, April. Now, I'll tell you, I've called the SEC, and I said, I don't know how many shares there are in the marketplace in my company. Tell me, I know what the short is. I know the short's 6 million shares, right? 6.5, 7. And what's the float? What's the available float to the public? Truth is, how many shares do you have outstanding? We have outstanding 18.7, and of the 18.7, it looks like 18.5 are either owned by myself, close family, close friends, or 10 institutions. So you're talking about 200,000 shares in the float, and you've got 6 million shares outstanding? That's in short. Does that strike anyone else here as strange? Now, how can that be done, though, if there's not that type of borrow to short your stock? I'm not the guy to ask that. You ought to be talking to the prime brokers about that. But all of those facts are publicly available. How much I own, how much the 10 institutions, you can add that up yourself, and you'll see what I'm talking about. So you're talking about counterfeit shares having been produced in order to short your stock? Well, electronically, you ought to talk to the prime brokers. Well, I know, but they're not coming on to talk about this. You know that as well as I do. Yeah, funny that. Well, it could be the case that the institutions are lending their stock. I know that 8 to 10 million of the shares people have gotten fed up with, and they've said just turn it into paper. So, and I know it's at least 8 to 10 million. So, so if that means that the institutions and folks who are owning 8 million, they could be lending those legitimately at the brokerage houses. But that doesn't explain how we got on the reg show threshold list. We're on that because there's an excessive failure to deliver problem, according to the SEC. That's not me making it up. It's how the SEC defines it. Final question. Just for those people who have been fans of your stock and who would like to see more profitability, can you give them a timetable by which you will actually become profitable both on an operating and on a net basis? Sure. First of all, the stock, hello to our fans, our stock price doesn't concern me. You tell me when you want me to stop growing at 80 to 100% per year. I'll tell you when we can get profitable. All right. Mr. Byrne, we appreciate you taking the time to come and talk to us. Appreciate it. Thank you, sir. Patrick Byrne, chairman of Overstock.com, president as well.